Hello, hello, hello. This is Gresh from the I Am CEO podcast. I have a very special guest on the show today. I have Seth Price of BluShark Digital and Price Benowitz. Seth, it's great to have you on the show.
Great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Definitely super excited to have you on. And before we jumped in, I want to read a little bit more about Seth so you can hear about all the awesome things that he's doing. And he's an accomplished attorney and transformational thought leader. Seth Price is a founding partner in the business backbone of Price Benowitz, as well as the founder and CEO of BluShark Digital. And Seth took a two-person law firm, scaled it to 40 lawyers in less than a decade, and now he takes the same digital power that brought the firm to create a best-in-class digital agency focused on the legal sector in BluShark Digital. Seth, great to have you on the show. Are you ready to speak to the IMC?
I am ready. I should just bring you everywhere. If I have someone introducing me like that, I wouldn't have to. Life would be a lot easier.
Yeah, absolutely. I say all I have to do is just hear about and talk about all the awesome things you're doing. You're doing all the awesome work. So I guess just to kind of kick everything off, I wanted to hear a little bit more on what I call your CEO story. We'll let you get started with all the awesome work you're doing.
So look, what you said, I was building a law firm. A buddy that I went to college and law school with, he's a lawyer's lawyer. He loves being in the courtroom. I didn't. So we, after playing in the first .com bubble in New York, where I tried to scale a legal Zoom Avo type play. The bubble burst in April 2000. By January of 2001, everything was gone. Our company, US Law, had 30 million on the table, never just disappeared, and had to reinvent. And that's when we started Price Benowitz, basically self-taught SEO, built a website, hired a lawyer, built a website, hired a lawyer. And as we were doing this, we're like, man, this is great. But like I saw there was a market beyond the law firm. And like anything else, the classic CEO story is you saw a need in the market. You couldn't find somebody to sell it to, so you did it yourself. Then let's scale it for others. And that was our pitch. I did it for myself. I can do it for others. We got over 150 law firms now. We got plastic surgeons. We are essentially really expert in the local search for professional services. That's been our niche, and we just geek out on it. And it was sort of not just self-fulfilling, but self-sustaining. And you could appreciate this, which is it's one thing to create and have employees do something, but in order to keep and retain people, you need to be able to pyramid so that, or at least it's much more profitable, so that as we expanded, we were able to keep and retain awesome talent as managers who could then leverage really talented people, homegrown talent that we would train in-house to be able to do the different things that are needed in SEO, right? You know this, right? It's high quality content, authoritative links, a well-coded site, well-structured site, and a Google My Business strategy. And in local search, you do those four things, you're going to hit it out of the park. And so when I first started, every 2 years, I'd lose my right-hand guy or girl. And I got sick of it. So I said, look, I want to be able to have this turn from a cost center to a profit center where I could keep and retain that great talent. And that's been the run we've had at BluShark.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. And I think that so many times when we look at, success and what really makes things take us, as you said so well, it's all about creating that pyramid structure, having a great team, and of course, being able to attract that great talent, but also keep them there. And I think that's when you really start to hum and reach a different level, when you're able to kind of do that consistently on a regular basis. And you guys have been able to do that. It's great.
No, it's been fun. And it's funny because, with owning two businesses, law firm has a lot of legacy issues. Legacy has been around over a decade, and there's communications, there's different departments, and law firms in general are not an ideal business by any stretch of the imagination. We have ethics rules we got to deal with. We have non-competes that we're not allowed to use. There's all sorts of issues that go on in a law firm that don't have, and it's just not really sellable the way a non-law firm business is. In the real world, you have some multiple of EBITDA and somebody else will take your business. Legal world, it doesn't really work that way. So in building BluShark from scratch and having an amazing co-pilot in the form of David Brenton, who was our intern at the law firm and is now president and shareholder in BluShark, the idea that we can basically from scratch build the things and do many of the things I couldn't do at the law firm. I don't know if you're familiar with Vern Harnish, Scaling Up. He was a guest on my podcast a few weeks back. And after reading the book, I was like, at the law firm, I always get upset because there's so much stuff I know I should be doing, but I can't get done based on personalities and business structure and everything. Whereas I turned around at BluShark, I'm like, man, this president who's never even read scaling up is freaking doing most of what's in there. We have our teams, we have our team culture, we're hitting the ground running with all these different things. And that has been part of what I've loved most. And part of it has been, and apropos for your podcast, as the CEO or founder, taking a step back, not getting in the weeds. Our until recently, much of our employee force were millennials. Everybody's aging now, so they're getting older. But many of the people we hired were people I couldn't connect with. And there were people, when I spoke, I think that like psychosomatic shock, they thought their dad was talking to them. And like, I found that if I could, rather than speak directly to them, speak to managers and let those managers handle stuff, it really created a structure and a culture. And there's stuff where, somebody who in my world, fire this guy tomorrow, they'd be like, no, you can't do that. This person is connected to these people. Let's do this, this, and this. And so I've sort of allowed them and given them the rope, to be able to connect and create a culture that, as the CEO, I'd like to say, yes, I cannot take credit for the awesome culture we have, because my instincts and gut wouldn't comport as well with the millennial culture. And I feel like that the people that we have in place have done an exceptional job of creating that environment that allows people and allows us to row in the same direction. Learned a lot, I think, from the people working with us, and that I could not have done that alone.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And I think so many times the more we learn, the more we realize like this is our lane, this is what we do best, and we're able to kind of stay in that zone of genius, so to speak. We realize that it is the teamwork, it is the people that we have that are managers, employees, whatever and however that might be termed, is really what makes things go, and we can kind of get out of our own way, which a lot of times can happen. So I know you touched a little bit upon both of the businesses. Could you tell us a little bit more on each and how you serve the clients that you work with, and what you would consider to be either your personal or even the business's, what I like to call secret sauce, or thing that you feel sets you apart?
Sure. So on the law firm side, we're a business to consumer law firm. If somebody's been injured, they're arrested, somebody's died, all different personal life, divorced. These are things where we can help. And I think that our secret sauce is, I very early on, from a mentor of mine, took on the philosophy that we are a plumbing service, not a law firm, in the sense that, like, the hot water heater in your basement explodes. What do? You pick up the phone, you search, you pick up the phone. So you need to be found, because before we entered the market, the marketed firms were not great. There are many good ones now, but when we first entered the internet space, people were not mixing great marketing and great practice of law. So that's the first piece. And the second is having an intake team that can slice and dice and figure out what is viable and get them the help they need. So the law firm, that's been our 1-2 punch. And so for entrepreneurs, I like you have an extensive network. If anybody has questions in the legal space, even if we don't do it, happy to sort of figure out where we can get you the help you need. On the digital space, we've stayed in our lane. We've really focused on, we don't do e-commerce. We've focused on search and even local search, professional services. And that's where we've dug deep. We're really good at it. And what I feel is that by creating an environment where we've scaled to the point where there's a division that does links, a division that does content, not just a person. And that, as being in the space, there's so many people that will sell SEO without doing the heavy lifting that's needed to execute. Because you get this, somebody comes to us, wants to be a client, and we run a set of reports, and we're like, oh my God, this guy hasn't had a link built in a year. And you're like, what the F? Or, their content package is regurgitated news blogs that went out the door 7 years ago. So the idea is, by providing that value, look, as it's not as sexy a game, SEO, because if done right, the margins are okay, but they're not tremendous. It's not a SaaS-based model. And there's a lot of SaaS-based models coming into the SEO space. I feel that at least for the time being, there is still this need for higher level SEO to be done, which can't be done in an automated fashion. It takes actual labor, domestic labor, that's going to sit and do stuff. Not that you can't layer different tasks from overseas, but you want to make sure that Google is looking for authority and that you want to make sure that the authority that you're demonstrating is not cringy, it's not broken English, but it's instead actual authority that demonstrates this person's the best answer for a question.
That makes so much sense. Now, I appreciate you for sharing that. And I think so many times, as you said so well, that being able to kind of, I always say, instead of going wide, going deep, and to be able to provide that quality, understand each of the different nuances, and have a team that can understand and see a lot of those things. Because a lot of times the clients don't even understand all of the different aspects. And as you mentioned, link building, for example, to see that you haven't had one in like a year, that's a cause for concern, especially if you've been paying potentially somebody to do that. So to be able to kind of understand and see those gaps and see that SEO especially requires, or I think it's becoming more and more important for you to have that custom somewhat content, so that you do show how you are a cut above the rest, how your blog post is better than what has already been created. And it often requires not just kind of regurgitating that content and information. So I love that you're able to kind of to understand that and then help clients with that.
No, it's look, there are different ways to do this. You get this. You get emails that come in daily. I get 20 of them a day. And the idea of first page of Google, the problem is, and it's the analogy of it. If you know anybody who flips houses, or, there's a certain amount of stuff that you can do without a permit. There's stuff without a permit. There's stuff that absolutely needs a permit, in my opinion. And there's the stuff that's the gray area, let's say. And the problem is with SEO, for most law firms, they don't know what's being done, or for anybody, they don't know what's being done. So there are things, and this, you could get something to shoot to the first page of Google quickly. It'll get crushed as soon as the algorithm updates, or maybe not. Maybe it'll have a little bit of a run. But for people, particularly in the spaces we're in, their URLs are aged. It's their firm identity. You don't want to burn that. And so just like you don't know what's behind the wall, but, if you don't do it right, it will come back to bite you. And that's one of those things that generally 9 times out of 10, when there's an algorithm update, I'm thrilled because we're doing the hard work every day. So it's going to rise. We rise to the top. And it's not perfect. SEO is frustrating. There are days that it's not there. But over time, when you do stuff right, Google's job is to figure out who's playing by the rules they've set, how to put it in there. Does spam still work? Spam still works. But my feeling is high quality content, authoritative links, they still rule the day. Google's been trying to eliminate the need for links over time. It's still not there. And for the foreseeable future, we're in a links and content world. That may change and we'll pivot, but we want to make sure that we're delivering the value that the Google algorithm wants today.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I love how that kind of translated into both of the businesses as well, too, because I think so many times we're looking for kind of like the cheat code or the thing that we can do quicker, whether we're talking about SEO or talking about, business in general. But to be able to understand that you're building value for the long term, that's one of the things that helps to separate whether we're talking about Google algorithm or we're talking about business in general. Oftentimes, if you are putting in the work, you're doing the time, you're providing that value, then it will separate itself over time. So I absolutely appreciate those secret sauces. And so I wanted to switch gears a little bit, and I wanted to ask you for what I call a CEO hack. So this could be like an app, a book, or a habit that you have, but what's something that makes you more effective and efficient?
A great question. I think that I have somebody who takes stuff from different sort of sources. We mentioned Vern Harnish scaling up. Somebody who spun out of him the whole traction EOS world, and the idea of using the huddles, using the touch points, moving rocks. And what I try to do is just figure out which of these different things works and leveraging those. And I think that, like anything else, it's having a system. And if you follow the system, great. You may want to make tweaks, but having some sort of process in place to allow yourself to move forward. It is one of those things that making sure that your team has bought into that so it can be executed. And you can see very clearly, when the team functions and buys into it, it is great. And when, and we've been really stressed with the pandemic. Everybody went virtual, great. But a lot of those touch points that were happening, it demonstrated that if you didn't have the discipline to have the meetings, they weren't going to happen organically. And I think that's been probably the biggest lesson for me of this time, is making sure that I go back and sort of say, okay, great. I could see a lot of my weaknesses because things that were not happening were because, hey, we didn't see them in front of our face. And a year into COVID plus, I'm now starting to see some of those break points. And that's so go back to your question. The hack is, I think it's to figure out what your systems are and then follow them.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. I appreciate you for sharing that, and I can't help but go back to what we were talking about with the algorithm as well too. Is like that starts to filter out, and so it's so important to have like those systems and things in place in our business, because you start to see like when there's disruptive things like, I don't know, a pandemic. Sometimes we have to look and see what are the processes, systems that are there, and when we have that in place, not only does it allow us to see what's working and what's not, but it also allows us to know what might be falling through the gaps, and we can make those tweaks and changes so that we can run like the fine oil machine that we're hoping to have. But I think if we don't have those things in place, then it's hard to make those tweaks and changes if you're just kind of doing it haphazardly on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I want to ask you now for what I call a CEO nugget. So this could be a word of wisdom or a piece of advice. It might be something you would tell a client or something if you were to hop into a time machine, you might tell your younger business self.
Oh, that's a great question. You know, I think the piece that I've gotten to know over time is you don't know what you don't know. And the sooner you get to that point, the better. And so, look, there's stuff that I know, but you don't know what you don't know. And that happens in life in general on a regular basis. And that the sooner that you embrace that and are constantly sort of, how do I improve? How do I find, expertise that can help me move the ball forward? I think that that's the piece that I wish I had personally grasped earlier, but is something that the longer I live, the more true it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially with things, that change and adapt, over time, even when you think that you know something, it completely adjusts, and then you're stuck kind of learning, something new again. But I love that nugget because I think it speaks to what I often talk about, like being a quote unquote CEO, founder, or entrepreneur. You kind of have to have that ego to believe that you're going to build something great and you're going to be able to take it, kind of improve the mousetrap, so to speak. But at the same time, you have to be able to take a step away from that ego and know that you don't know everything. And it's kind of like that balance beam act of leadership that you have to have in order to know that you still want to have that curiosity. You want to be able to lean on those people, especially on the team, that are able to know certain things. But at the same time, you want to be able that you can, you want to be able to know and believe that you can build that better mousetrap, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Seth, truly appreciate that. And now I wanted to ask you my absolute favorite question, which is the definition of what it means to be a CEO. And we're hoping to have different quote unquote CEOs on the show. So, Seth, what does being a CEO mean to you?
I think that I'm going to take this back a step. A friend worked for the governor of Maryland a few years ago. And I was always amazed, like, what does the governor do? And in one sense, he's like the chief cheerleader for the state. He does trade deals, he cuts ribbons. And I feel like when done at the highest level, you are the person who is just sort of making sure that everybody within your team is there and the outward brand for the world. I mean, there's a lot of e-myths. We had Michael Gerber on my podcast not that long ago. So like there's the idea of where do you want to go next? Yes, that's a huge part, but let's put that aside for a second. I think that the making sure that you're there to solve problems, to be there for your management team, to help motivate and lead the greater organization and be the face outside. Those are the things that I think are most essential for a great CEO.
Yeah, I appreciate you for sharing that. And of course, dropping, the E-Myth and having, Michael Gerber on your show, because I think that that really gives you a full idea of exactly what it means to be a CEO, entrepreneur, and business owner. But I think I love how you made that analogy between the governor and being at the ribbon cuttings and being the cheerleader, because I think so many times we're in the people business and we forget that sometimes, where we're thinking about analytics and numbers and all of those things. But sometimes you need to be the cheerleader for the people, the organization, the mission, whatever that might be. But you also may need to be the stern person. And that balance beam act that we kind of talked about a little before is a lot of the hats and roles and perspectives we need as leaderships to really kind of go and take things to the next level.
Absolutely.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, Seth, truly appreciate that definition. I appreciate your time even more. What I wanted to do is just pass you the mic, so to speak, just to see if there's anything additional you can let our readers and listeners know. And of course, how best they can get a hold of you, hear about your podcast, and all the awesome things that you and both your businesses are working
I
on.
appreciate it. Look, I'm easy to reach. Seth at either pricebenowitz.com or blusharkdigital.com. I geek out on this stuff, so feel free. It doesn't need to be to purchase something. If I could be of advice either from the legal or digital space. I have two podcasts that are out there. One is the SEO Insider, where we geek out on stuff like hardcore SEO stuff with some of like the national thought leaders. And the other is Max Growth Live, where we talk about law firm growth. So really the companion to everything we've talked about here. We geek out about SEO on one day, and on the other day, we talk about what are the things that are needed to build a professional services organization. And it's been a fun ride. Really appreciate the opportunity to sit here and chat with you today. Got to have a great conversation where we, whenever you talk like this and you have a conversation, it makes you think about, hey, these are the things I'm aspiring to do. Which are the ones I may be coming up I'm short on, and what's my homework based on this conversation? So I really appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you for giving us the opportunity to geek out a little bit. And I know we kind of scratched the surface on everything, which is why I love you have your podcast and information. And you left yourself open to people being able to reach out as well too. Because I think as we learn, like we become greater by a lot of the times the things we take in, the environment of things that we have around us. So I appreciate you for spending some time with us and holding that space, and as well creating so much valuable content. So appreciate you, my friend, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.
Sounds great. Thank you.